J.P. Morgan wasn't just a banker, he was the banker. A man whose name still commands boardrooms, whose shadow still looms over Wall Street. But how did one financier come to shape the rules of modern finance and leave behind an empire that outlasted every boom and bust? This is the story of power, not just the money kind, but the institutional, generational kind, the kind of power that builds railroads, creates billion-dollar corporations, and steps in when the U.S. government falters. Welcome to Quiet Money Files. Today, we decode the Morgan Matrix. The story begins across the Atlantic. Before J.P. Morgan, there was Junius Spencer Morgan, a London banker with connections to European capital markets and an eye for opportunity. His son, John Pierpont Morgan, inherited more than wealth. He inherited position, influence, access. By the time Pierpont arrived on Wall Street, he wasn't starting from scratch. He was playing chess on a board his father helped build. In 1871, he co-founded Drexel Morgan and Company. But when Drexel passed, the name changed and Wall Street changed with it. J.P. Morgan and Company wasn't just another bank, it became the bank that American industry turned to when it needed capital or control. And Morgan, he had both. People like to say Morgan didn't build things. That's true, he didn't invent the light bulb or lay track himself. But what he built was far more powerful. Morgan consolidated America. He saw that chaos in the railroads, dozens of competing lines battling for passengers, driving prices into the dirt wasn't innovation, it was entropy. And so he Morganized them. Railroads, electricity, steel. He didn't just fund industries, he engineered them. In 1892, he merged Edison's company into what we now know as General Electric. By 1901, he had created U.S. Steel, the world's first billion-dollar corporation. He bought out Andrew Carnegie for nearly $500 million. Not bad for a man who didn't build anything. But Morgan's real genius wasn't just about the deals, it was about the control. He didn't need to own every company, just sit on the right board. Through interlocking directorates, Morgan partners connected railroads to steel mills to banks, weaving a financial web so dense it held the American economy in its grip. Justice Louis Brandeis called it the Money Trust, a shadow network where 10 men in a walnut-paneled office could decide the price of coal or whether your town got electricity. By 1912, a congressional committee found that Morgan and his allies controlled over $22 billion in assets. In today's dollars, try $700 billion, and this was before the Federal Reserve existed. When the country hit a financial crisis in 1907, the government didn't step in, Morgan did. Picture this. Wall Street is collapsing. Banks are failing. There's no Federal Reserve, no central bank. It's 1907, and the economy is teetering on the edge of ruin, so the country turns, not to Washington, but to J.P. Morgan. In the library of his Manhattan mansion, Morgan locks the doors behind a group of trembling bankers. No one leaves until a solution is signed. He decides who gets saved, who fails, who lives, who dies, and the system listens. One man, acting as the central bank for the United States. It worked. But it also terrified Congress, and by 1913 they passed the Federal Reserve Act, finally institutionalizing the kind of power Morgan had wielded alone. After the panic of 1907, the rules began to change, and so did the Morgans. By the 1930s, reform hit hard. The Glass-Steagall Act split banking in two, investment and commercial. The House of Morgan had to choose, and so it split. J.P. Morgan & Co. stuck with traditional banking. Morgan Stanley was born from the ashes, taking the high-stakes, high-reward investment business. Same bloodline, new battlefield. Over time, the institutions adapted, merged, rebranded, and eventually recombined. By 2000, the merger of J.P. Morgan and Chase Manhattan created the behemoth we now know as JPMorgan Chase, the modern face of Morgan's legacy. A legacy that began in Victorian London and ended up as the world's largest bank by assets. The House of Morgan wasn't just a bank. It was a machine, a carefully constructed engine of influence, moving capital, shaping policy, and stitching together the seams of a growing empire. From railroads to steel, from panic to stability, the Morgans engineered more than mergers, they engineered trust. And then, they disappeared. Not suddenly, but systemically. transformed from men into mechanisms, from legacy into logo. Today, JPMorgan Chase is the world's largest bank, but it's also just one piece in a system the Morgans helped imagine. Their story is a reminder: behind every institution is intent, behind every skyscraper, a name. And while dynasties may fade, their designs, if clever enough, endure. This is Quiet Money Files. We don't just follow the wealth, we decode the power behind it.